I want to tell you something nobody told me before I booked that flight. That the fear you feel, the specific, stomach-dropping fear of doing something like this completely alone, doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It means you're about to do the most important thing you've done in years, maybe decades. My name is Robert. I'm 79 years old. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, in the same house I've lived in for 31 years. I have 2 grown children, 4 grandchildren, a bad left knee, and a passport that by the time I turned 67 had exactly 1 stamp in it. 1. From a cruise to Mexico in 1994 that my wife Carol planned entirely, and that I mostly remember because I got sunburned on the first day and spent the rest of the week in a hat. Carol died in March of 2019. Pancreatic cancer, 8 weeks from diagnosis to the end. 8 weeks is not enough time to say everything you need to say to a person you've been married to for 41 years. You just run out of time, and then it's over and you're standing in a house that suddenly has all the wrong number of coffee cups. I am not going to make this video about grief. What I am going to tell you is that sometime in the fall of 2021, about 2.5 years after Carol died, I was sitting at my kitchen table on a Tuesday morning with nowhere to be and nothing that needed doing. And I thought, I have never been anywhere alone, not once, not for a single night in my adult life. Carol was the traveler. Carol was the one who kept a folder, an actual paper folder, of places she wanted to go. Portugal, the Japanese countryside, a town in Slovenia she'd read about once that had a lake so still it looked like the sky had fallen into it. I looked up that town. Bled. Lake Bled. I looked at pictures for about 40 minutes, and then, before I could think about it long enough to talk myself out of it, I opened a tab and looked up flights. That is how it started. Not with courage. With a Tuesday morning and a tab I opened before my brain caught up. I want to be honest about what happened next. I closed the tab, and then I opened it again 2 days later. I did this for 3 weeks. I told my daughter Ellen about it, and she got a look on her face I recognized. The same look Carol used to get when she thought something was a bad idea, but didn't want to say so directly. Ellen said, "Dad, that's really far. Are you sure you want to go somewhere alone where you don't speak the language?" She said alone the way you say it, when alone is the part you think is the problem. My son David was more direct. "Dad, you've never traveled by yourself. Why start with Slovenia?" I understood both of them, and if you're watching this thinking about your first solo trip, you are probably already hearing those voices, from your children, from your friends, from the part of your own brain that has decided something being unfamiliar is the same as it being dangerous. It isn't. I booked the flight on a Wednesday afternoon in November 2021. Round trip. Asheville to Ljubljana, connection in Frankfurt, arriving December 28th. 10 days. I booked it, and then I sat back, and my heart was going so fast, I put my hand on my chest to check it. Like I'd done something irreversible, which I had. Some decisions you only get to make once. The fear I felt wasn't really about Slovenia. I think it was about the fact that this was the first major thing I'd decided entirely for myself since Carol died. When you've been part of a pair for 41 years, you stop thinking of your wants as things that deserve their own answer. Carol would have had thoughts about Slovenia. She would have made a spreadsheet, called the hotel to ask about the bathroom situation. She was particular about bathrooms, in a way I always found slightly excessive, and now miss so much it's almost funny. There was no spreadsheet, just me, and a flight, and 10 days in a country I had never thought about before a Tuesday morning in October. Here is what I did in the 3 weeks between booking and leaving. I'm telling you in detail because this preparation is the difference between arriving terrified and arriving terrified, but functional. The first thing I did was get a notebook, paper, not phone. I wrote down every fear I had about the trip, not to solve them, just to look at them. Fears that live only in your head expand to fill all available space. Fears written in a notebook are just a list, and lists have ends. My list had 14 items, some practical. I don't speak Slovenian. What if my luggage gets lost? What if I fall? The left knee is not reliable on uneven ground. And I'm in a foreign country with no one who knows me? What if I have a medical emergency? Some were harder to write down. What if I get there and I'm so lonely I can't stand it? What if being somewhere beautiful without Carol makes everything worse instead of better? I wrote all 14 down. Then I went through them one at a time. The language problem. Slovenia's tourist infrastructure in Bled is excellent, and English is widely spoken. I downloaded Google Translate and used it maybe 4 times in 10 days, mostly to read menus. The Slovenian people I met were patient in a way that felt genuine. One woman at a bakery spent 5 minutes helping me understand the difference between 2 pastries through hand gestures and expressive eyebrows. I bought both. They were excellent. The luggage problem. I bought a carry-on bag. One bag, overhead compartment size, that came with me on every flight. Packing for 10 days in a carry-on sounds impossible until you do it. You need layers, one nice thing, comfortable shoes with grip, and your medications packed in 2 separate places, so losing one bag doesn't mean losing all of it. 2 separate places, write that down. The falling problem, proper walking shoes. I moved slower than I used to, paid attention to where I put my feet, used railings without feeling any particular way about it. The knee held, you adapt. The medical emergency problem. I called my doctor's office and had them write down my full medical history, current medications with dosages, blood type, and emergency contacts on a single sheet. 3 copies, one in my wallet, one in my bag, one photographed and emailed to myself so I could access it from anywhere. I also looked up the emergency number in Slovenia before leaving. It is 112, same as most of Europe. I wrote it in the notebook. I also got travel insurance. Real travel insurance with medical evacuation coverage, not the basic cancellation policy the airline pushes when you book. For 10 days, it was under $200. When you are traveling alone at 79 with a bad knee and a heart that ran fast when you booked the flight, knowing there is a plan and a phone number if something goes wrong. That knowledge is not a luxury. It is what makes the rest of the trip possible. The phone. My daughter Ellen set up an international plan and showed me how to use WhatsApp so I could message her without it costing anything. I wrote down every step in the notebook and followed them. It worked. Those were the practical fears, all manageable before I got on the plane. The other ones, loneliness, Carol. What it would mean to be somewhere beautiful without her. Those I couldn't solve in a notebook. Those I had to get on the plane and find out about. I landed in Ljubljana on the morning of December 28th. Cold. December light in Slovenia is low and pale, the kind that makes stone buildings look like they're from a different century, which most of them are. I took a bus from the airport to the city center. I got on the right bus. I got off at the right stop. I stood on a cobblestone street with my carry-on and looked around at a city I'd never been in and felt, for the first time in, I don't know how long, completely present. Not happy, necessarily, just present. Here, this street, this light, this cold air here. I walked to my hotel, small, family-run. The woman at the front desk told me her name was Anna, and when I said I hadn't eaten, she wrote down a restaurant 3 streets away and said the fish soup was very good. I sat alone at a table by a window and ate fish soup and watched people walk by outside and thought about Carol the whole time, which I had expected and did not feel destroyed by it, which I had not entirely expected. She would have loved the soup. She would have asked Anna for the recipe. She would have taken 17 photographs of the street outside and then complained that none of them captured the light correctly. She would have been right. I spent 2 days in Ljubljana, then took a bus to Bled. Lake Bled in December is not the version you see on summer postcards. It was gray and quiet, almost no tourists. The castle on the rock above the lake, half wrapped in mist. I stood at the edge of the water on the first morning and looked at it for a long time, longer than I would have if Carol were there. When you travel with someone, you're always negotiating time, how long to stay before moving on. Alone, you stay until you're done. I stayed until I was done. That is the thing I want to tell you about solo travel that I could not have understood before doing it. The time is yours. All of it. You want to spend 3 hours at a lake in December staring at mist? You do that. You want to eat dinner at 4:30 because you're hungry at 4:30? You do that. You want to go back to the hotel at 8 and read in bed because you're 79 and your knee hurts and you've had a full day. You do that without explaining it to anyone or feeling like you're slowing them down. I ate every meal alone. At first, this felt like what I had feared most. By the 3rd day, I had stopped noticing it. By the 5th day, I had started to prefer it. You observe differently when you're alone. A couple at the next table on the 4th night were having a hushed argument in a language I didn't speak. But I understood the argument completely because some arguments are universal. I ate my dinner and watched the snow start outside the window and thought, I am in Slovenia. I am 79 years old. I understand everything. Now here is the practical roadmap. I promised you one and I'll deliver it. Step 1. Decide before you decide. Before you pick a destination, make one prior decision, not about where to go, about whether you are going. Sit somewhere quiet. Write down this sentence. I am going to take a solo trip by blank. Give it a date, not a destination. The commitment comes first. Step 2. Pick the right first destination. The right first destination is not the most exciting one. It's the one with the lowest friction, English widely spoken, good tourist infrastructure, solid health care, not too far from a major airport. My 3 recommendations for first-time solo travel over 65, Portugal, specifically Lisbon, Ireland, specifically the West Coast, and Slovenia. All 3 have warm attitudes toward visitors, manageable geography, and reasonable prices. Portugal, especially, has become a go-to for senior solo travelers for exactly these reasons. Step 3. Book accommodation that does the work for you. Skip vacation rentals for your first trip. They're cheaper but more isolated, and when something goes wrong, there's no one at a desk. Book a small family-run hotel. The person at that desk will know your name by the 2nd morning, tell you where to eat, warn you about the slippery path, notice if you don't come down for breakfast. That person is worth more than any app. Step 4. Build a loose daily structure before you leave. Not a schedule, a rhythm. Morning explore, afternoon rest. Rest is not optional. It is not laziness. It is how you have energy for the next morning, evening. Find somewhere good to eat, slowly. That's the whole structure. Everything inside it is flexible, but having the outline means you never wake up in a foreign city feeling adrift. Step 5. Make the emergency document. Medical history, medications and dosages, blood type, emergency contacts, travel insurance number and policy number, local emergency number for your destination. 1 page, 3 copies, 1 photographed and emailed to yourself. 30 minutes of work. You will never feel grateful for it until the one day you need it. Step 6. Set up a daily check-in with someone at home. Not a chaperone. Not someone who needs to approve your plans. Someone who knows your rough itinerary and gets a message every day. A photo, a sentence, anything. Ellen got a photo from me every evening. One night it was just the fish soup. She sent back a thumbs up. That was enough. It removes a specific anxiety from the trip. The fear that something could happen and no one would know for days. I have taken 6 solo trips since Slovenia, Portugal, Ireland, Croatia, Scotland, Japan. And last spring, at 78, the Lake Carroll had in her folder. I'm not going to tell you it wasn't hard. It was hard in the specific way that doing something meaningful is hard. Not the heart of suffering, but the heart of feeling things fully. I stood at that lake and felt everything I expected, and some things I didn't. Then I went and had dinner alone at a restaurant, where a kind man brought me something I hadn't ordered because he thought I'd like it. I liked it. I want to end by talking directly to whoever is watching this who hasn't done it yet. Maybe you lost someone. Maybe you just retired and aren't sure what you're for anymore. Maybe your kids are busy with their own lives, and your house is too quiet, and the days feel too long. You have time. Finally, the one thing you spent 40 years wishing you had more of. And now you have it, and don't know what to do with it. Here is what you do with it. You book a flight. Not to the most ambitious place. Book the low-friction trip. Book it before you've thought about it long enough to talk yourself out of it. Write your fears in a notebook, solve the ones that can be solved, and accept that the rest, the ones about loneliness, about being alone with yourself in a way you haven't been in years, those can only be answered by going. You will be afraid in the airport. You will be afraid on the plane. You will be afraid when you land somewhere new, and the signs are in a language you can't read. And then something will happen. A woman with expressive eyebrows will help you understand the difference between 2 pastries. A man will bring you something you didn't order. You'll stand at the edge of a lake at dusk and realize that the world is larger than your house and your routines and your grief, and that you are still in it. Really in it, in a way you had started to forget. I took my first solo trip at 67. I was terrified. I am 79 now, and I've been to 8 countries alone. The only thing I regret is the years I didn't go. You don't need a partner. You don't need your kids' permission. You don't need to be brave before you buy the ticket. The bravery comes after. You just need a Tuesday morning and a tab you open before your brain catches up. Go.